Hey, Dwayne.
Carl.
Was this an awesome week?
Oh my God, it's such an awesome week.
That's bad news. That's not good news for anybody.
Wait till I tell you about the dirty pipe.
Oh.
Hey, guys. Haven't talked to you all week. Nothing really new to report, right?
It's so
I wish
quiet.
that were true.
It's so quiet.
I was listening with a friend to last week's Security This Week who had never heard the show before.
Nice.
They still speaking
Just last
to you?
night. And he's... yeah, I know. But he kind of got bored about halfway through, when we were actually talking about real stuff. But, at one point he turns to me and he says, "Man, this is better than watching football. There's more drama going on in the world than you can even fathom in on Netflix."
It's so crazy.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It writes itself, especially what we're talking about this week.
So what are we talking about this week?
I think the general overarching theme this week is the all-out cyber war that's going on at this point. So leaking of data.
If only someone had predicted it.
What?
and it's really going on mostly between these hacking groups, isn't it?
Yeah, it has been fascinating to see ransomware groups against hacking groups against unknown actors. For example, the first article we had was on Fretpost.
Yeah.
So Russian leaks data 1,000 cuts podcast, and it talks about how there is information that's being leaked from Russia and has been for a long time now, even before the invasion started, around critical infrastructure inside of Russia, military locations, nuclear plants, etc. And a lot of people are saying, it's got to be one of those ransomware groups. And then some people are saying, it actually sounds like it might be the NSA.
So interesting from last week, Conti, somebody inside there got mad at the leader or whatever and leaked a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep. Dropped all the internal messages, all of their active connections into customer. I say customers with the air quotes, customer sites, people paying to get their sites decrypted. I actually believe the keys are now available, which is kind of nice.
Which is a big blow to ransomware.
Wait a minute, the keys to what?
The ransomware.
So Conti, they're a massive ransomware group, right? So they would deploy ransomware and encrypt your systems and say, hey, for 2 Bitcoin or whatever, we'll decrypt your systems for you. Well, now those master keys have been released.
Yeah, but don't they just regenerate those? I mean, why wouldn't they do that?
They have to use the key. They use pretty much a regular set of keys for all their encryption so that they can just provide them.
Let me just clarify. The key we're talking about isn't a physical key. It's a long random
public-private key. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a bunch of data.
It's probably 1024 or 2048 bit key. That's just a random set of bits. But if you have it, you can unencrypt all the data.
Okay.
And so let's say you got encrypted 2 weeks ago by Conti and you were trying to get the money together to give them the ransom. Now you don't have to. Their keys are online and you can just decrypt the data yourself.
How do you know that it was Conti that hacked you and did the ransomware?
They advertise their name and want you to pay them.
Tell you.
Really?
Brag.
That's like robbing a bank and saying, signing your name in spray paint on the wall, putting a photo. Ha ha.
Bonnie and Clyde. Hey, tell them Bonnie and Clyde robbed your bank.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Yeah, and the way these keys work, you have 2 keys, right, that are mathematically related together. Right. So it's a 2-key system. One key does the encryption. The other key can then do the decryption.
One is private, held by the decryptor, and the other is public, which the encryptor uses to encrypt.
Right.
One's the key master, the other is...
So these are the private keys that got revealed, and therefore you can decrypt the data.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so more leaking. Maybe leaking is a theme for this week.
It's very leaky.
It's a very leaky week.
No bucket will get rid of these leaks.
So what's next?
So interestingly, another post we have this week is Russia shares a list of 17,000 IP addresses that are allegedly DDoSing, so denial of service, taking down Russian organizations.
So wait a minute. When you say Russia, do you mean the state?
The Russian government shared a list of 17,576 IP addresses allegedly that are being used to launch a distributed denial of service attack against Russian organizations and their networks.
I'm sure the FBI will get right on that.
So hold on, wait. do you get a prize? I'm not sure.
Patrick, does this sound like Saddam letting all the prisoners out of jail just before the invasion? Or
I mean, I think he's trying to publicly name and shame, but I think he doesn't realize how much everyone hates him.
He's like, Patrick's IP's on that list and he's shutting down banks in Russia. And people are like, okay, woo! Do we shake his hand?
Yeah,
or
right.
Are you looking for us to shut him down?
Yeah. And just for the record, as far as I know, my IP is not on that record.
Wait, let me shut something down.
Carl's is, but not mine.
Hang on. Yeah, I'll be right back.
We wouldn't use our own IPs.
No, we'd use your IPs.
So actually, Russia has stepped on the mine so bad. They really thought they were pulling the same trick they did in Georgia and with Crimea and in many other cases. And they just
got away with it.
It's not the same this time. The sanctions are going to stay in place. The cyber war is in full view of the public.
Right.
And now Russia's the victim. So this doesn't end well for Putin. It might not even end well for the dictatorship that is Russia. And I'm hoping that they turn into a democracy in the next year or so because of an uprising.
Yeah, you said that from the beginning.
I did. And I hope that's the case. But what's happening right now is the cyber war has finally turned against the Russians. For many years, the Russians have hacked with impunity because the West has been enjoined from hacking. And Ukraine is no slouch. The people we work with in Ukraine are very bright, very brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And now that you've got anonymous, and I was kidding, but I wasn't kidding. The FBI is not looking at people to prosecute for attacking Russia right now. I don't recommend you do it because there's still risk, but there's nobody like trying to look out for the interest of the Russian state right now.
Right. You probably have a letter of marque implied if you're trying to hack.
Yeah. You may get a nasty letter at some point that says, hey, we know you did a thing.
We know you did that, and by the way, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Don't do it again.
Here's the presidential seal.
Do it again, but well done, sir or ma'am.
But this is the cyber war on full display. And one of the things that I think we should do in this country, and I'm going to recommend it to anybody who will listen, is when the war broke out, the Ukrainians realized we have hackers in this country. Let's organize them under the state and let's give them topics. And we talked about that last week.
Well, the problem, of course, with that, Patrick, is sometimes the hackers go after the state.
Well, but
don't they?
I'd rather have people pissing out of the tent, inside the tent pissing out, than outside the tent pissing in. And so
wait, hang on a second. I got to tweet that. Patrick Hines says,
right. Hey,
somebody's going to tweet it.
But what happens is, well, that's actually a common saying. But what it means is, for example, if there was a reserve component of the National Guard, or reserve component or National Guard component that allowed me and my team, including Dwayne, to join the military and be auxiliary hackers on demand, I would gladly put on a uniform and wear rank again and be ready when they called us to duty. And they could vet us.
The hackers would never survive boot camp. You couldn't put a hacker through boot camp. The sergeant's in your face and yelling at you, and you're like,
no, that boot camp might be like, show us your floppy.
Haven't you seen the movie Space Force? Haven't you seen the movie Space Force? This will be much easier.
Okay, well,
bring out your 0 days. Oh, could the uniform be a hoodie? Could we have that would be awesome.
I can't imagine what else it would be.
Here, the other thing, Patrick, is like anonymous, right? How does one become a member of Anonymous? It's not like they have a website where, hey, submit your resume. I'm sure, like your name has to. Yeah, you got to know somebody. You have to be well known for a dangerous hack that you've done, and you didn't get caught.
My bet is that some of the people we know from Hack the Box are in Anonymous. Some of the people in the top 10 or top 100 teams,
I think it's
that are in Anonymous. So. And we made contacts with a lot of people, and we never told them who we were, and they never told us who they were.
Yeah, but they could find out. They're anonymous.
Not if we're good enough.
You know what I find is fascinating though is it seems like everybody who does Hack the Box works for a telco. I'm just saying. That's the standard answer. Oh,
well,
what do you work for?
Quoted.
I work for a telco.
I work for a telco.
That's hacker speak for I can't tell you where I work for.
So I guess to bring it back to what we were saying is, this is an example of the cyber war on full display. And for the first time, Russia's on the receiving end, and they're not prepared. A lot of people assumed that because Russia was the source of a lot of cyber attacks, they were protected and they were prepared. It's exactly the opposite. The sheriff thinks his house is impregnable, but it's probably got the worst locks and no security system, and it's probably the easiest one to rob because they have such arrogance, and the Russians are the same way.
Well, and a lot of people say the same thing about the U.S. and about, all of the cyber players. Like we're really good at offensive, but defensive, a lot of power grids are open, that sort of stuff. So,
what did you guys hear this week about Russia threatening to take down the internet and take down communications and all of that stuff? Wouldn't that affect them as well? Do they have their own
Well, so there was an article where Ukraine requested that ICANN take Russia off the internet, and ICANN famously said, "No, we don't do that.
Explain ICANN.
That's not our game." Yeah, ICANN is, and then you're going to make me try to remember what it stands for.
Well, you don't need it. Yeah,
you don't need to know, but you
don't need to know the acronym. But what do they do?
So they run the internet.
Basically, they monitor. Yeah, they run the internet. They're basically in charge of the top namespaces, and they're in charge of keeping the internet running. They're the
they make sure
there's
no domain collisions and
So they have said that is not our job. So we're learning the boundaries of what is and is not possible. So it's a good thing, because that means that if somebody has a problem with the major powers in the world, if America, Britain, Canada, England, Germany get mad at Sudan or Egypt or Venezuela, we're not going to kick them off the internet. It's a safe space. It's not really a safe space, but you know what I mean. So we're finding what those limits are in a way that everyone just guessed, and now we're actually seeing what the limits are. Russia's going to threaten everything it can because they're cornered.
Yeah.
And they're feeling, like they can threaten their way out. But all the threats are fairly hollow now, because if Putin invades Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, he's now picked a war with superpowers that actually have militaries who know how to use their tanks. I now believe with full faith that if we entered Ukraine from the west, we would roll the Russians all the way through the country within a few weeks. And I didn't believe that a few months ago. I thought they had better equipment. So I don't believe that the threats by Russia that they're going to take down the internet, because honestly, I think if they could, they would have.
Yeah. So interesting things have happened in the last week that I don't remember if we talked about or not, but Anonymous supposedly hacked the RT Russian television station and is publishing and putting on, they took over the broadcasting and switched it up with real images and videos and stories of the war, because Putin's government is lying to the Russian people about, this is what I've heard, lying to the Russian people about that these are, don't worry,
it's well documented. They're publishing misinformation.
Yeah, they're publishing misinformation. Exactly.
They're saying that the Ukrainians are Nazis, even so Zelensky is Jewish.
And they're going there to help them to fight off the Nazi coalition or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know better. We have news all over the space, and we've seen the shelling.
So do we have a link to that anonymous publishing?
We do. We have a link to Yoranon TV, which is on Twitter, saying just in, the hacking collective Anonymous today hacked into the Russian streaming service Wink and IVI, like Netflix, and live TV channels Russia 24, Channel 1, Moscow 24, to broadcast real war footage from Ukraine. And it also looks like they also broke into a French satellite TV station that they can get in Russia as well, and they're broadcasting there too. So,
all right, so we'll publish the link into that. And this is a post from March 6th. So this was literally 4 days ago.
4 days ago.
And you gotta be careful with these things, right? So we were talking just before we started recording that just yesterday, I think it was NB68, a subsect of Anonymous, had said, "Hey, we've got access to all of the source code from Kaspersky, and we can rip it apart and blah 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 and all that good stuff." And they started posting the big trove of information they have. And everybody was up in arms about it. And then some security researchers started really digging in. And they said, wait a second, this looks like this is just the data that's on their public website. So all you did was take all the data on their public website, put it on a different site.
So in other words, you got to take what we say with a grain of salt. We're reading these things as they come in.
Yeah, exactly. And this, unfortunately, from my standpoint, I mean, I love the fact that cyber moves so fast, but cyber is moving so fast. Like there's a lot of announcements that come out that we're like, okay, you got to be careful of this or careful of that or whatever. And then sometimes it's dialed back. It's not as bad as it was, or it might be worse. Like take a look at Log4j.
These kinds of cyber moves are more likely to have an impact in moving the needle on the perspective of Russians. So let's put it frankly. The Russian people are the only people who are going to take Putin out of power.
Sure.
That's it. Yeah. There's no one else that's going to take them out. We're not going to. They have too many nukes. We're not going to invade. The UN's not going to. A
NATO-Russian conflict would be essentially World War III. Would be the end of nobody it. Can afford that.
Right. Yeah. So the Russian people will have to be enlightened or immiserated to the point where they can't take it anymore. Or Putin's going to have to come to his senses, withdraw all of his troops, apologize, and beg forgiveness. I don't see that happening.
Well, and he knows that. He knows that he has to control the misinformation. So there's an article about a new Iron Curtain is descending across Russia's internet, and this is from the Washington Post. So I'm not sure if you have to have a subscription to get this, but essentially, Soviet-style censorship and jailing of journalists for 12 to 15 years for spreading quote-unquote lies is back.
That sounds like that's out of the Chinese playbook.
Totally.
Right?
But the difference is I think the Chinese have had more time to practice. I don't think the Russian system is up to snuff with the Chinese.
Yeah.
So I would bet that there'll be a lot of chinks in that armor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense.
So, Patrick, you posted a story here about an update on the threat landscape in Ukraine.
Yes. So basically, this is a summary of the major threat actors. So Fancy Bear, which is a Russian or in government military associated threat actor. Yeah. They're doing some phishing. There's a Ghost Rider, which is a Belarus threat actor. They have phishing sites up and they're trying to do things. Even a Chinese-based Mustang Panda are trying to do things against European entities. So there are anonymous-like entities. They're not hacktivists. They're government sponsored. Also fighting back and doing things. Now the problem they have is I don't know that anyone's going to notice in the West the uptick in activity because it's not like these people were not attacking us 24/7 last month and 3 months ago. Right. And so I think that's where they're at a disadvantage. They've been hacking us full tilt forever, and we just started hacking them full tilt 2 weeks ago. And so, yeah, they're active. They're trying to do phishing. There's more of a light on it, but it doesn't. I don't think it moves the needle. What does move the needle is when state-run TV gets taken over and their satellites get taken over and information gets leaked. That's what hurts the Russians.
Well, so question for you, Patrick, in your military sort of history knowledge, have you ever seen a war as a recent war or cyber attack whatnot recently where nation states have fought back and forth? Like I know we've been in a cyber war for a long time. I know North Korea attacked Sony directly. I know it was Iran, I believe, who attacked the Sands casino directly. So we've seen like nation states attack. But Sands didn't hack back. Sony didn't hack back, right? So is this the kind of one of the first global scale wars where we're seeing a lot of people in the fray in cyber and not just kinetic?
I think so. I think that when you go back to the first Gulf War, there was a hack that I think I talked about where we managed to slip a patch into radar-guided anti-aircraft systems for the Iraqis that prevented them from seeing our planes when they were flying over, which meant when they turned them on, all they did was attract our missiles and we destroyed them. So it helped them prevent them from shooting down our planes. That was a one-sided hack. And then you've got Stuxnet, which was a one-sided hack. And then you've probably got, now I don't have knowledge of this, but if I had to guess, I would guess that hacking at a lower level intensity occurs between Pakistan and India on a regular basis. And if I had to guess, it's also Israel against the Palestinians on a back and forth basis.
Right.
And then North Korea, South Korea on a regular basis. But I don't think anything like this intensity has ever happened before, where you have literally the superpowers of cyber all in the mix, because China's in the mix.
Right. Well, I mean, take China hacking into the Office of Personnel Management, right? That's direct nation state against quote unquote, nation state. But we didn't see like a cyber response. It wasn't. No, because it didn't end up being a cyber war. It was like hey, we'll attack. I believe it was Obama who said, hey, we'll respond in kind when we feel like it, when it's right for us.
So let me give you an analogy. So the whole thing about the fighter jets with Poland, where Poland said, hey, we've got fighter jets. Let's give them to America to give to Ukraine. And America's like, we're not going to give these planes to Ukraine. Yeah, right. And everyone's like, why aren't you giving these planes to Ukraine? And the reason is, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud because I don't currently hold a security clearance and I can get away with it.
Well, we all know.
You're not supposed to do this in the broad daylight.
Right.
You give them the plane. You basically push the planes across the border to a field and you let the Ukrainians jump in them and they fly away. You don't fly them in from America. You don't announce it. So I believe that what will probably happen is this will die down and then everyone will grumble and say, well, we're stupid for not giving them the planes.
Right.
And once that dies down, we're going to shove the planes across the border and they're going to take them from there.
Right.
But there's some things you can do overtly and some things you can't. Yeah. So whether or not retaliation was carried out against the Chinese for that, we'll never know. Well, maybe in 50 years it'll be declassified.
Right.
Sure.
But those like Stuxnet, that no one's ever taken credit for that.
What?
Stuxnet.
We
should explain that. So we should explain
I think we did on one of them, but yes.
Well, let's explain it again. So back a while ago, a virus showed up that was targeted very specifically to centrifuge machines, for centrifuge controllers that happened to be enriching uranium in Iran. And
okay, I remember.
This virus would infect systems, check to see whether it was the system it's supposed to attack, and if it wasn't, it would propagate and shut itself down in the old place. And so it was just hopping around, waiting to find the right system before it then damaged them. When it found the right system, it used several 0 days to infect the system, meaning software vulnerabilities that to a hacker would be worth millions of dollars. So not something done lightly. And it caused the Iranian centrifuges to enrich uranium to spin much faster than the readings on the console, so that it damaged the centrifuges and sent their program back quite a bit. No one ever took credit. I'm pretty sure it wasn't anonymous. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Fancy Bear. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was America and Israel.
Yeah, and from what I've seen in the leaked Snowden documents, I think it is 100% was pointed at the United States. Yeah, there's definitely documentation.
Another reason to hate Snowden.
Yeah, there's definitely documentation of, I believe it was a transition between, was it Bush and Obama? Where it was right in the middle. Actually, if I remember correctly, it was called Olympic Games. There's a whole thing on it. You can actually go and see that now, which is interesting.
But this was the first true cyber weapon. And it ushered in the age of the cyber war, I believe. And one of the things it did that most people didn't really acknowledge is it established that the United States is a predominant player in this game and not just a stooge waiting for everybody to hack them.
Right.
The NSA is every bit as good as any other organization in the world at this stuff. They're just better at keeping it a secret.
Do you remember, well, speaking of NSA and secrets, do you remember when their secret of tracking all the phone calls and stuff like that was revealed.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Christian Weyer in Germany. You know him. He's one of our regional directors. And he goes, basically, NSA stands for no security anymore.
Yeah, that's about right.
I mean, that was the scary time when we realized that, holy crap, there are people and companies and governments that have technology that can hook into your phone without you even knowing it. And, you know, and they promise they won't use it against civilians. But here's the thing. They use it against civilians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the landscape's much harder to do that now. It's possible. It's actually easier to do it through the cell towers than it is through the devices.
Sure.
But, you know, unfortunately, our society demands absolute security and protection from all possible threats, and yet still wants privacy. And you can't have both. Yeah. You got to pick. You got to have some risk, or you've got to live in a cocoon that has no privacy. I prefer some risk, but that's not the attitude of the general population.
Yep. Okay, so I guess that's all we have to say about the Ukraine-Russian conflict now, which means that up to this point, we haven't talked about anything that the listener can do anything about. The good news, I guess, is that everybody's busy hacking each other in Ukraine and Russia, that they're probably not paying attention to you, except when they do. So let's talk about some domestic things that have happened this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of interesting things that happened this week. I think we had hinted towards this maybe last week or the week prior. Mandiant. So Mandiant, I believe it's Kevin Mandia who started Mandiant. Anyways, huge in the security space. Microsoft was courting them. This week, it was announced that Mandiant has accepted to be a part of the Google family. So Google Cloud picked up Mandiant, which is a massive security organization. Wow. So it's interesting to see large organizations like Microsoft and Google now saying, "Hey, listen, the thousands of security engineers we have aren't enough. Let's buy a massive security organization." So that's interesting to see.
That's a $5.4 billion deal.
That's a small deal.
Pocket change.
Yeah. Wow.
Pocket change.
I mean, to Google and Microsoft, it's not that
that's true.
I don't think this signals a massive consolidation of the security space.
No,
because I think a lot of the security players are very independent. But
sure.
it definitely is the major players, the tech giants, shoring up their security bona fides, because everyone is finding out that they're much more vulnerable than they thought they were.
Right.
Well, and it right now is, maybe I'm biased, but right now I read all these articles on how it is super hard to find cybersecurity specialists. Like InfoSec is way underpopulated with engineers who want to do what we do.
And unfortunately, we're also hearing stories of companies that are doing cyber and are underwhelming in their performance.
Because the bar is so low at this point, because if there's nobody out there doing it, like if you just generate even a simple scan and report, like people are like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." I
had a story today. I was meeting with somebody, and he said they got hit with a virus, and they went to find a security company to deal with them. This was before we knew them, and the company said, "Well, we want $20,000 up front to see if we can find anything." And he's like, "Wow, that's not going to happen." He's like, "Well, how about 15,000? And if we don't find anything, we'll give you the money back." And he said, "Okay." And so he gave them the code, he gave them the files, and gave them the information. And what they came back with is, so we can't do anything about it, but we started talking to the hacker to find out
someone who scammed you out of $15,000. Happens to be me.
Well, and the guy said, "So you're telling me you're negotiating with the hackers?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Give me my money back. That's not what I want."
Right. So I could have negotiated with the hackers.
Yeah. He restored from backup, and he just, he's got religion, and he's doing all the things he needs to do. He's patching. They've got password management. They're doing vulnerability assessments, by third parties. They're doing phishing against their own population. They're doing all the things they need to do, and that's what it takes. But we hear those stories way too often of security professionals, and I'm air quoting here, who all they want to do is run a tool off the shelf and charge you thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's problem solving like anything else, and you really have to be creative and think like Dwayne.
Burn it to the ground.
You got to be a little evil.
Dwayne doesn't have voices in his head. He is the voice.
He is the voice.
Sometimes I feel like that little girl meme who sees the fiery house and then looks back with a smile. That's me. Yeah. She's mine.
All right. We can't get out of here without talking about dirty pipe.
Oh, the dirty pipe.
What the hell is dirty pipe?
We have two more things we should talk about. One, before we go on to the dirty pipe, because I'll leave the dirty pipe for last.
Okay.
Nvidia got hacked. And a lot of...
Well, is this the same hack from last time?
It is the same hack from last time, but what we're actually seeing now is the data that was stolen. One of them was the signing certificate. And you might say, okay, well,
code
who cares?
Signing certificate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah. So drivers get signed. So when you put your new, your brandy new 3080 Ti or whatever in your computer, and when you install the drivers, they're signed by Nvidia, but they also have a special place with Microsoft, where Microsoft says, listen, this driver, we've looked at it, it's fantastic. Don't worry about it. Allow it to have access to whatever it needs access to.
So let's explain signing.
It's not a virus.
Let's explain signing. Remember we talked about private and public keys? So you can think of a piece of, code that is signed, or a library or an executable or driver or whatever. It is pretty much stamped with this key that can be that anyone with the private key can decrypt and say, yes, that is legitimate.
It's actually the public key that's used.
Yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. I got my wires crossed, but basically it can be verified that came from Nvidia.
Yeah. So when the operating system looks at a driver to load, it sees that there's a signature on it, and the signature is an encrypted hash of the file. And it basically, what happens is you go and say, oh, it's Nvidia. Let me go check to see whether the public key matches this hash. And then if it does, and the hash is the same as the hash of the file, then it's been unadulterated. The problem is when that key is lost, the private key is lost, bad guys can sign those things. And unfortunately, it's easy to sign and authenticate something, but most organizations don't update their revocation lists, or they don't have a way to automatically know that something is no longer valid.
They don't patch.
So that becomes hard. That's right. And sometimes that's all they'd have to do is patch.
So what this means is that Nvidia has to generate a new key, and they have to sign everything with this new key, and everybody has to be aware that they have changed it. Otherwise,
they need to revoke the old key.
Yeah. Otherwise, somebody can make an Nvidia driver that sucks all the data out of your machine, because let's face it, it's at a pretty intimate level with your CPU, right?
But you're not going to be willing to add the revocation list entry until you've got the new driver. Otherwise, your video is not going to work.
Right, like all of my driver right now, I'm running an Nvidia card, right? So you revoke that driver right now, that would be a bad thing. So
unfortunately, our advice is don't update your driver.
Well, yeah. I mean, on this particular case,
updates.
Yeah, I think our advice is probably, if you're going to update anything, never update it from something that's not the site you should be updating it. You should never go to a random website and download an Nvidia driver. You should always download it from Nvidia. And actually, Nvidia has an Nvidia experience, which will download the driver for you, right? So you don't need to worry about it.
Or if you get an email from some random dude named Randy saying, hey, your driver probably needs to be updated. Here it is.
Right. Yeah.
Don't click that link.
And I don't. What I think is you're probably not going to see it affect the general population. I think what you're going to see is it at like the corporate level. For example, when I go to breach a company, if I want to bypass all of the antivirus and endpoint detection and that sort of stuff, I'm going to sign my malicious code with NVIDIA's certificate. That way, when I run it, antivirus won't see it.
Right.
That's because creating a driver and then signing it with that certificate is not a trivial task.
Right.
It's not something a script kiddie's going to do.
Creating a driver isn't, but signing is trivial.
Yeah, signing's easy, but But
creating the driver, because it's got to run as a driver.
Yeah.
Sure.
In order to do what you want it to do. That's not trivial. So it's not something that's within reach of the average hacker. But an organization like Anonymous, an organization like Fancy Bear, any of these APTs,
they'll be using it, absolutely.
Yeah, and of course we could do it. It's our kind of cup of tea.
All right, so T-Mobile's in the news this week.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just got a T-Mobile device, so I'm a little concerned about this. What happened?
Tens of millions of personal identifying information was leaked and is now being seen on the dark web. And basically, it means it's in play. So when a massive breach happens, there's a bit of a period where you hold your breath to see whether it shows up on the dark web and starts getting passed around, or whether it just goes into a dark hole and never seen again. For example, when Marriott lost 500 billion records, I think it was 500 billion. It was a lot. Maybe it was only 500 million, but I thought it was a bigger number. Those records never showed up on the dark web or anywhere else because it's believed the Chinese did it. And the reason they're believed to have done it is to try to track agents and people who were working against the Chinese government and track their motions. That didn't end up in any breach databases. This data has now shown up, and it has the information, personal identifying information for tens of millions of customers, potential customers, and former employees.
So would this show up on Have I Been Pwned? Because it was in August.
Yeah, Troy's probably already, consuming that data over lunch.
Yeah.
And Have I Been Pwned? We've talked about it many times. I recommend everyone go there, put in their email address, figure out how to use it, and find out what passwords they've used in the past are out there, and stop using those passwords.
Yeah, absolutely. Or use password managers that will look for you. But
even then, you still got to make sure. Oh, the password managers, some of them will do that. You're right.
Yep. Yeah, like mine will check and say, hey, these are already been leaked. Go take care of it. I think Chrome
does a good job.
Yeah.
So bring it home, Dwayne. Dirty pipe.
Dirty pipe. All right. So we talk.
We've been waiting for.
Everybody wants to.
Or dreading.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dirty pipe. So dirty typically relates to something that is a use after free. And what I mean by that is you will use a part of the heap, which is just a part of memory, and then you'll go to then destroy that piece of the heap, but it stays there. And then you go to reuse it, a use after free. A lot of those exploits are called dirty because you didn't fully clear that memory and then you reused it before you initialized it.
And you're talking in terms of a program utilizing memory.
Correct. And
a user's not going to sit at their keyboard and say, I'd like to use some pipes. And this is a program and code that's running that does these things, uses heap, allocates memory, allocates a name pipe, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And, years ago, I think it was 2016, people might have heard of Dirty Cow. And Dirty Cow was a sort of a use copy on write, COW, cow. So it was a dirty copy on write where you could then elevate your privileges to root to full administrative access on a Linux build by using a dirty cow.
Let me back up for a second. So the dirty part is that there's already data in the device and it hasn't been cleaned, or the memory space, and you're going to reallocate it. And instead of it being cleared, it's going to have some value, and that value might be useful to the hacker to change a value in memory.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this particular case with the dirty pipe, this dirty pipe issue affects every Linux kernel 5.8 or later. This includes Android. So this is why this one's awesome. But this gives you anybody who's running an Android phone should absolutely go and make sure you've patched it. Anybody who's running a Linux server should absolutely go out and make sure you've patched it. Because a kernel at 5.8, you will have this issue. What this issue gives you the ability to do is a local privilege escalation. So if I get onto a particular Linux box, or I'm able to run a command on your phone, from there, what I can do, not to delve into all the deep dive stuff of like pipes and pipe communication and that sort of stuff, but I have the ability to make a request to a pipe to write to a file, or to do a thing, right? Reset a password or whatever, and then make that same request, but as a against a privileged file, and then make the request again against a non-privileged file, and it will overwrite the privileged file. So you say, okay, well, who cares? What could I do with it? The exploit, if you ever follow Blasty, the guy's awesome on Twitter. So I think his handle is @BL4STY. He put out a POC. What you can do with this is I actually can go onto a Linux box, run this POC right now, and become an administrator on the box. So it gives you full administrative access to the box through this dirty pipe.
Wow. So basically, if you have an Android phone, you have any kind of Linux distribution, go patch it.
Exactly.
I would also add a lot of the routers out there.
Yeah, that's Linux. A good point, Patrick.
And so some of them aren't. I know, Dwayne, you've decompiled a lot of different routers, but a lot of them are Linux underneath the covers, and this applies to them.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. TVs. Yeah. So TVs typically, like, those are running Android as well. Actually, you know what? I might mess around with my TV tonight and see if I can dirty pipe. That sounds wrong. Dirty pipe my. I'm gonna dirty pipe my TV tonight.
Are you gonna buy it a drink first? That's the question.
I'm gonna end up buying Dwayne a new TV on Monday, I think.
Yeah, probably. It wouldn't be the first time.
This begs the question: how does one update a smart TV? And how does one update a router? I guess the routers are easy. You kind of log on to
firmware
192.168.11 or whatever your local thing is, and you just say update firmware. Yeah.
Yep. TV is typically, if it's a Google Android style TV, you go to the menu on the TV, go all the way down to About, and usually in there it will say the software version it's running. If you click on it, it will say, do you want to check for an update? And then you can say,
and I'm sure everyone does that all the time.
You know, right?
Nobody does
Well, that's what I was thinking is I don't remember the last time I updated my Sony TV, and I'm sure it's running a vulnerable
But you remember the last time you hacked one.
I do, actually.
Now, what about if you have a cable modem? You know, is the cable company on the hook for updating your firmware?
Yeah, you're not going to be able to.
Okay. So here's the deal with the cable modems. 90% of the time they're using the default administrative username and password. So you're already an admin on the box, so it doesn't matter. Like, you can break in almost any cable modem pretty easily.
Holy crap. Really?
Yeah, they're terrible. That being said,
how come we had to wait till episode 34 to tell Joe Sixpack, hey, you know that cable modem in your basement? Yeah, that's completely insecure.
Those aren't hard. Those aren't hard to break into. Yeah, those are out. Those are relatively easy. But you don't manage those. Those are all managed by the ISP.
Yeah. Okay.
So like Xfinity or whoever, they'll blow down images to those all the time.
All right. So they're watching out for your cable modem, but after the cable modem is usually where you have your Wi-Fi router and all that, and that's all on you.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people aren't doing that anymore. They have a DocSys that has DHCP in it.
A DocSys.
There's a lot of people. A DocSys is a standard you can buy. So, like, let's say you have Xfinity, Comcast.
Yeah.
They'll give you a cable modem, but you can also buy your own. And DocSys is a standard. And
it's a brand.
If you use their no, it's a standard. It's DocSys version 3 or 2 or something like that. But you can go to Best Buy and buy a cable modem that's up to the certain level, and it will act as the cable modem and the router and the firewall for you, and you own it. And then you save $5 a month from the cable company.
Oh, that's interesting. But then, of course, you have to do the maintenance on it and keep the firmware up to date. Yeah.
Yep. But then you have control. So what I think I say something on a regular basis. I should probably say this episode is the enemy of security.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's the case. If you want it to be more secure, you're going to have to take the bull by the horns unless you can find somebody else, some vendor that takes it as seriously as you want.
But I mean, I would pay $5 a month to have the cable company make sure that I'm secure and safe.
Yep.
The question is, will they do that?
Exactly. There you go. There's the rub.
And there's the rub, McFly. All right. Guys, this has been an incredibly dirty hole-touching, problematic episode.
Stay off that dirty pipe, Dwayne.
Dirty pipe. And
I'm going to go dirty pipe my TV. I'm going to dirty pipe everything I can find.
And we'll keep you updated next week. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.